Can everyone hear me? Welcome to United Astronomy Clubs of New Jersey. We are here once again in Jenny Jump State Forest in Hope, New Jersey. So while I'm giving everyone who's admiring the view off the rock and also admiring some of our telescopes which we have open, give them a little bit of a chance to wander down. I do want to welcome everyone who's not only joining us here on site, but also online, because that's right, we do live stream these to YouTube and Twitch. So if you're ever looking for something mildly educational to fully educational on a Saturday night at 8 p.m., and you don't have anything like fancy dinner plans or you're going out dancing with your significant other, do feel free to join us online. Say hi in chat, ask questions. We always love to see that. In addition, I want to encourage everyone, especially our online people, to check us out on our website, uacnj.org. It's where you're going to find a list of all our upcoming talks, all our past talks, so you could go, man, I really wish I hadn't missed that presentation on the Fermi paradox. But never fear, you can also find a link there to our YouTube where we store all our presentations. So if you did miss a talk, don't worry, you can go back and find it and still ask questions. I do look for comments and questions in the chat, and I do try and get those answered. In addition, you'll find information on our member clubs, because we are actually an organization made up of other clubs, and one of the easiest ways to get into any hobby, especially astronomy, is to find and join your local club. Not only because of ease of access, but because they're going to have all those tips and tricks for viewing things in your area. Because let's face it, the tips and tricks I know for out here in Warren County, New Jersey, aren't as helpful to someone who might be coming from New York City or Scranton. Very much more light polluted. So they're going to have better ideas of where to go to see the neat things in the sky. You can also follow us on our social media, Facebook, Instagram. We have a Discord server, all great places to keep in touch, find out what we're doing, any special events, and also ask questions or just show off your brand new astronomy rig. With that, looks like most of us are coming down and joining the talk. Yes, we went back to get our comfy seats. We always encourage people to bring their own comfy seat, because let's face it, your seat is a lot more comfortable than a hard plastic bench. Or, if when all else fails, feel free to pull up a nice clump of grass or a bit of pavement on a picnic blanket. So, you're not here to listen to me blabber on, but for everyone here, we do need to go over the safety briefing. If you need to use the restroom, that is the porta potty in the back to my left, your right. It is big, it is blue. When it gets dark, it is illuminated slightly by a red light for ease of finding. Speaking of getting dark, it is a state park. It does, in fact, get dark. So for all of our safety, we do ask that everyone here, when you're driving away, use your headlights, because let's face it, it is no fun to fill out the paperwork or have to go to the hospital for running someone over or being run over. So let's avoid that. We've had a great record of that not happening. I'd like to keep that going. I've been run over. Let's not do that. 0 out of 10. Actually, it's more like negative 100 out of 10. So let's not do that. That being said, any flashlights or cell phone lights, whatever, that we may need to help us navigate in the dark, we do ask that you keep those pointed towards the ground. It is not fun to get blinded by the latest 100,000 lumen monstrosity from Amazon that you got in the mail yesterday. So let's try and avoid that. Night vision is precious, and it takes a while to come back once you lose it. In addition, you may have noticed, since it is light out right now, that there were many white sheds. With each of those sheds, its roofs rolled off and houses its own telescope. Now, depending on what volunteers we have on any particular night, depends on what telescope is open, and the ones with the roofs rolled off or their doors open have a volunteer there who will happily answer any questions and also show you what's up in the night sky, assuming that the clouds favor us and go away. Because unfortunately, optical telescopes don't give us much in the way of good viewing. Optical telescopes cannot, in fact, see through the clouds. Their equipment can, but it's less seeing. That you have to have fancy programming to see anything. In addition, we have a little museum and gift shop area. I will be manning after the talk, since I cannot be in two places at once. Despite trying, I'm not allowed to break the laws of physics, but feel free to check out our Meteor displays and whatnot. So, with that, we're going to talk about the HamSCI Personal Space Weather Station and the Gannon Geomagnetic Storm. I swear I can talk. Might not be able to, but tonight here we have Dr. Nathaniel Frissell and Rebecca. I don't. Potter. I'm like, I know the last name, but I couldn't think of it. But I'm going to introduce Nathaniel here, whose ham radio call sign is W2NAF, is an associate professor of physics and engineering at the University of Scranton. Dr. Frissell's research interests include space weather, radio science, with a focus on traveling ionospheric disturbances and high-frequency radio propagation. His teaching interests include digital signal processing, electromagnetics, communication systems, and space physics, space weather. His passion for radio and radio science began in middle school when he was introduced to the amateur ham radio hobby through scouting. He eventually went on to earn his Bachelor in Science in Music Education and Physics from Montclair State University, and his Master in Science and PhD in Electrical Engineering from Virginia Tech, working the Virginia Tech Super Dual Auroral Radio Network, the Super Darn, because we all love our fun acronyms. Dr. Frissell founded and now leads the National Science Foundation. Foundation's the correct word. Okay. And the ARDC supported ham radio science citizen investigation, HamSCI organization. He's an advisor for the University of Scranton Amateur Club. There are so many acronyms here. I'm going to let you finish this because I'm getting I'm like I got lost in the alphabet. All right.
Okay. Good. Hi everyone, how are you? Hi. It's really nice to meet you. My name is Nathaniel, and yes, I'm an associate professor at the University of Scranton, and my home is actually originally New Jersey, and like they said, I got my I did my undergrad at Montclair State, and I'm very happy to say that my undergraduate physics professor, Dr. Mary Lou West, is in the audience tonight, so you should give her a round of applause. She and her friend Ed over there, they wrote most of the articles that you are reading in that a newsletter that they've been handing out. I have with me tonight Rebecca Potter, KE2EBI, and Rebecca is my recently graduated physics student from the University of Scranton. And she has done many great things in her life, and she's off to do many, many more. And the great things in her life that she's going to talk to you about tonight are going to be about her undergraduate physics thesis, which was about the Gannon Geomagnetic Storm. I will let her tell you about that. And then you should also know that she's going to do many great things in her life because this fall she's going to be starting a PhD program in optics physics at the University of Rochester. So we should also give her a congratulations for that. So we're really excited to have her. So I did start this group called HamSCI, the Ham Radio Science Citizen Investigation, which I will explain more of what that is in a minute. But one thing you should see on my slide is I am very collaborative. So I have lots of institutions and people that collaborate with us, and you can see the many different logos on here. So I'm from the University of Scranton. Probably the next most important one for you to know about here is the New Jersey Institute of Technology, because they host a shed over in the end there with a lot of instrumentation, and through their connection, I've been able to put these radio receiver instruments here. So we actually installed last year, well, no, just this past fall. How long ago was it? No, it was in the springtime, just a couple months ago. It's going fast. We've had the radio there for a while, but we now have a public display where you can actually interact with it in the museum. So I'll talk a little bit about that after. So I have to watch out here. And so after the talk, if it's cloudy, you can go in the museum and I can show you the radio system in there, and you can actually see how it works. Okay, so let's talk about the ham and HamSCI. And am I supposed to stand right here so so I can move anywhere in the white box and don't trip over the that okay, so this is what so they have to confine me. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the ham part of HamSCI first, and ham is for ham radio, also known as amateur radio. Now, one of the things I like to do at these talks is I like to ask people, how many people here have an amateur radio license? Everyone look around, raise your hand high if you have a ham radio license. We've got quite a few. So, and that's great. So ham radio is a hobby about communications, and the people who are ham radio operators are communications hobbyists, and that means they like to talk about their hobby. So they're very friendly. So if you are interested in ham radio, I want you to, again, after this, find the people that have their hand raised, and you can go up and talk to them and ask them about what they do in ham radio and why they find it fun, and maybe you would find it fun too. So again, if you're a ham radio operator, raise your hand high so people who aren't ham radio operators can know to go ask you questions. And the ham radio operators also like to talk to each other, although usually from many miles apart. So, okay. So what, sure. Yeah, Rebecca's gonna do the slides. Okay, so what is ham radio? It's a hobby or a communication service for radio enthusiasts, for people who are communicators, builders, or experimenters. And we have a wide-reaching age, all ages, walks of life. So I think we have some very young ham radio operators over there. Is that true? They're still working on it? Yeah, you can go down as young as like 5 or 6 years old, and then people as old as 100, 120 or something like that. They can get their ham radio license too. And in the United States, we have over 760,000 licensed amateurs and about 3 million worldwide. And one thing that defines, in order to be a ham radio operator, you actually have to have a license. And you get that license by studying basic radio frequency and electrical engineering, and you take a multiple choice exam. And what's neat about this is people who do this are naturally kind of self-selecting, so you know that these are people that really are looking for pathways to learning and education about radio and radio science, and it gives us all a common base to work around. It's also very nice for me because I'm trying to create a citizen science community where we have volunteers who are working on the science together. So by going to the ham radio community, I know I'm already working with a community that already has a self-identified interest in a certain level of base knowledge. Every ham radio operator has a government-issued call sign that identifies them on the air. So mine is W2NAF, or Whiskey 2 November Alpha Foxtrot, and Rebecca's is, it's Kilo Echo 2 Echo Bravo India, KE2 EBI. Right, okay. And so So that's how we identify each other. So when you see call signs throughout the presentation, that's what they mean. So what do ham radio operators do? We have all sorts of different types of communication. We can do emergency and public service. Our radio systems, the people who use them, they know how to set them up and adjust them so that if one form of communication doesn't work, they can usually make them work on some other form, and they don't have to rely on public infrastructure or companies or things like that. So it gives a certain level of robustness. So we have emergency and public service. There are people who do contesting or radio sports. So you try and make as many contacts as you can within a certain amount of time, and you get a score. And there's a whole bunch of people that are right now, as we speak, sitting in the United Kingdom. They travel there from all over the world for the World Radio Championship contest. So they're all the contesters. The real ones are all in England right now doing this big international contest. We do scouting. We have people that have these systems up in very cold places. There's one that's up in Eureka, Canada, up in the high Arctic up there. With NJIT and the National Science Foundation, we're working on putting those systems down in Antarctica as well. So there's lots of different things going on. And all right, so next. And the way this works usually is we are able to talk to faraway places because we will send a signal here on a particular frequency, say like 14 megahertz. It's lower than most of the frequencies you're used to using because you're mostly using cell phones that are up in the hundreds of megahertz or gigahertz. So ham radio operators on high frequency will use, say, like between 3 to 30 megahertz. That signal will go up to the upper atmosphere, the ionosphere. It will get bent back down to Earth and then go over the horizon. It'll let you talk to faraway places. The reason that the ionosphere exists and it gets bent back down to Earth is because the sun is sending out ultraviolet energy that ionizes or electrifies the upper neutral atmosphere. So without that ionization process, none of this long distance communication would be possible. That also means that our communications are very susceptible to space weather. So anything the sun is doing over here, or the solar wind over here, and how that hits the Earth's magnetosphere and moves things around over here, if you get the aurora, that can all change how our radio systems work. Sometimes it makes it better, sometimes it makes it worse, sometimes it just makes it more interesting. And that's really where the HamSCI part of things comes in, because we can use the ham radio signals to remotely sense the geospace system. Okay, so we're not using the ham radio simply to communicate now. We are now using the ham radio as a remote sensing or a scientific tool. And so that's why when I was in grad school, I came up with this idea called HamSCI, the Ham Radio Sciences and Investigation, where we get the professional space physics researchers working with, in partnership, the amateur radio community and vice versa to help advance both science and the amateur radio service. And that's what HamSCI is. All right. So we have many different projects, which you can read about in that brochure that you was handed to you. But one of the flagship projects we have going on right now is something called the Personal Space Weather Station. And we have people, volunteers, some professional people, working together to design and build different instruments that we can send out to people across the world, and they can install. And some of these are instruments that receive things and give us data. Some of them are instruments that transmit stuff so that the receivers can receive them. And then we use that as our data set. So the Personal Space Weather Station has 4 main components. The top one in the upper left-hand corner is a HamSCI high frequency receiver, and we have one of those installed in the shed over there. Then we also have a VLF receiver. We have a Whispersond HF beacon transmitter, which will send signals that receiver, the HF receiver, can receive. And we have the ground magnetometer, which senses the Earth's magnetic field. And that ground magnetometer, we also have one of those installed here right now. Okay, so what is this HF? This is a picture of the HF receiver that we have installed. it is the actual radio is right here. So this is what we call a software-defined radio. It listens to all the frequencies between, say, about 0 to 64 megahertz and just digitizes them, the whole band. And then thanks to the high bandwidth capacity of USB 3, we can pipe all 64 megahertz of that into this Linux PC over here. And then there's a piece of software called KA9Q radio, which can do a bunch of digital signal processing on it, and it can just extract slices of that spectrum that we want. And so that's really all you need for the radio part. But there's a couple of additional boxes here. So one of the things, what Rebecca's going to be talking about in a bit, she's going to be talking about these HF Doppler shifts, which require very precision frequency measurements. And she needs to be able to measure frequencies down to, like, I don't know, 0.1 or 0.01 hertz. That can normally be very difficult to get that level of precision or better just with standard oscillators. But if you have an atomic clock type of oscillator, you can get a very stable reference. Normally, that sort of frequency reference is extremely expensive. But did you know that pretty much everyone today is carrying around a receiver that synchronizes with this sort of precision frequency reference? Okay. Yes, and the phone, and specifically what part of the phone synchronizes with a highly precise frequency reference? The GPS, yes. So the way the GPS constellation works is they all have atomic clocks on them, and they're able to send codes down to Earth that we can decode, and that can be used as both a precision time and frequency reference, and then you can solve where you are on Earth from that. So you can get a little box like this for, say, like, $150. And it will sync up to the GPS system and give us that precision frequency reference we need that otherwise, before this invention, would have cost, tens of thousands of dollars. So this is what's really allowing people like you to be able to put this thing in your living room and make measurements like she's going to show you. So yeah, we have that GPS discipline oscillator. We also have a special timing injector, which injects precision time. We also have some additional filtering. So that's what makes that work. Okay, next slide. So when you go into the museum after this, you'll see a display that looks like this. And this is a picture of the 64 megahertz spectrogram, or this one's only showing 32 megahertz of it, showing what that radio receiver is receiving. And inside, you'll actually see it move. If we have speakers connected properly, you can actually listen to shortwave radio on it. You can listen to any shortwave radio station you want. You can actually listen to regular AM radio on there too. And so that whole computer setup is giving you access to all of this. And this, you can just connect your web browser to it and you can see this. So we have a demonstration of that running in the museum. Next. Some of those signals that you see there have digital information on them that tell you where those signals are being transmitted from. And this is a very popular thing for ham radio operators to do these days, is set up low power ham radio stations. They're just constantly saying, hey, I'm located here. It just sends that message out every couple of minutes. And that system was actually invented by a Nobel Prize winning astronomer, Dr. Joseph Taylor, who's from Princeton, New Jersey. So he invented that particular technique, and it's really just taken off around the world. So our system is not only letting you see the spectrum and listen to the different parts, it's also decoding those digital messages. So this is a display that's showing all of the signals that the receiver is receiving at a particular time from those digital messages. And so again, if you go in the museum, you'll see this display in real time, and you'll be able to know that when you look in the museum, this system right here is actually picking up all these signals from around the world, and it's putting them on a map for you. So, and it's fun to look at, It helps ham radio operators know where they can go operate, what frequencies they should use. And we also have graduate students and postdocs and professors combing through this data and actually pulling out like real physics and publishing papers on this data too, using this data. So it's really cool. Okay, so next. This HF Doppler shift, you're going to hear more about this from Rebecca in a little bit, but basically we have a station in Ohio. Now I'm going to say this once, but I don't want you to think I'm taking her thunder away. An important thing to know about I'm also an educator, so I actually have a education degree. And one thing I know is that you will learn things better if you hear them multiple times, if you hear them from many different people. So I'm going to explain it once, and you'll hear it from me. And then when Rebecca explains it again, you're going to remember again. You'll be like, oh, now I get it. Okay? So you're going to just explain it again. So we have a station in Colorado called WWV, run by the federal government. It's been running for over 100 years, and it transmits as a cesium or as an atomic reference on it, and it transmits on precise frequencies on 2.5, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 megahertz. And for years, the main purpose of that was to distribute time and also for people to know, oh, I can calibrate my radio to this. Well, now that we have this other GPS thingy, you say, well, my GPS is actually going to make better measurements tell me that what the frequency is better than what I'm actually hearing from WWV, because the ionosphere in between WWV and the receiver is messing things up. But that's actually beneficial to us, because now what we're able to do is we're able to use the GPS receiver that we have. We can look at all these variations that are coming in from this signal, and we can say, all right, these variations, it's because the ionosphere is changing. It's not because the instruments are varied. So basically, as the ionosphere goes up or goes down, as the ionosphere goes up, this path length gets longer. You get a frequency decrease. That's a red shift. If the ionosphere goes down, the path length gets shorter. That's a blue shift. The frequency goes up. And we can see this in these next plots. And you're going to see lots of these plots when you see Rebecca's, but you're not going to see this one, because this one was not during a geomagnetic storm. It was during a solar eclipse that took place on April 8th. And you can see right here, it kind of goes down and then up. This is actually the solar eclipse that was happening. And I was in Scranton. So smart people went to Cleveland, Ohio for the eclipse, and they had a beautiful clear sky. I got a job working at the University of Scranton, and it was supposed to be like 98% eclipsed, but we had 100% clouds. And we were still able to, even though we couldn't watch the eclipse with our eyes, we were able to actually see it in the radio instruments. That was cool. All right. I'm going to skip. This is a transmitter. Go on. This is a VLF, very low frequency system, which hopefully we'll eventually have one of those here as well. There's my friend Jonathan Rizzo there. Next. Here's the ground magnetometer. Next. All of these systems send data to a website hosted by the University of Alabama. That's one place to get data. Next. There are also websites that are run by people that aren't academics. The Whisper Demon and this PSK Reporter website, those are all run by volunteers. There are other places where you can see all the data, all these spots from all the stations around the world, all at the same time. It's really cool in real time. Next. All right. And we are very busy. We already have many of these stations already sent out across the nation. And we also have a big NSF grant. We got like $2 million to build more of these instruments and send them out. We're in the process of doing that next. All right, last year we installed one of those right here at Jenny Jump. Next. And you can see here's a picture of Rebecca standing right over there, and she's on the cover of the QST magazine. So we actually, our little project actually made it on the world's biggest ham radio magazine, the cover. So that was really cool. And then this is where Mary Lou and I are standing in front of the kiosk that we installed just a few months ago here. And our project's going pretty well, because next, we actually ended up on the cover of QST again this August for trying to putting these things down in the polar regions and stuff like that. So we've been doing very well with that. Next. Now, in Western Pennsylvania, there's an absolutely enormous ham radio station called K3LR, and I think he's one of the guys that's actually in Europe right now. But we had the opportunity to go to that station last year and install one of these systems, and Rebecca was on that trip. And from the rest of this presentation on, Rebecca is going to tell you about everything. Do you do you want me to do this part for you?
Is this on?
Yes, it's on. So I can do this, and you can go soon.
I think I want this.
You want to do that? Okay, I'll just go over here.
Okay, yeah. So, as Dr. Frissell just mentioned, last summer I had the opportunity to go on this trip to the radio station K3LR that's located in the Western Pennsylvania, where we installed one of the personal space weather stations that Dr. Frissell just discussed. So I'm just gonna show some of the pictures that we took on that trip and what we did. So so this first one is just a photo of me and some of the other undergraduates and one of our colleagues from Case Western University. Once we got to the K3LR. And so this was so this is a private property owned and these are all of these towers are, I don't remember the exact height, but there are multiple of these towers across the property, all of them receiving radio signals. One fun fact that I remember particularly from this trip, when I was standing outside looking at just how tall all these towers was, I remember being told that there's this red light at the very top of one of those towers over there, and I remember being told that light was about the height of a person, but they're so tall it just looks like a little red dot. So that just gives a sense of the scale that those towers are. On the first day of the installation, we were there for a few days. So on the first day, we split into a couple of teams to work on different parts of the installation. So that picture with me in it. I was working on assembling the receiver itself. And that's with one of our colleagues from Case Western University. And we also, in the other picture over here, we have some more of our people from the skeleton team, and I believe in this picture they were wiring up the instrumentation that was located a bit away from any buildings towards this track here where we had the computer set up. So there, and one component that we mentioned before was the ground magnetometer. Here we have, and this has to be partially buried into the ground. So here we have some people first had to drill the hole and then get it installed underground. And so this is the shack, and so this is another photo of the shack where where all that some of that equipment was eventually stored. So I believe this is a picture of one of the computer system that we had, which was attached to those receivers, which we set up outside. And then on the second day of the K3LR installation, we also had the opportunity to first take a tour of the entire station. There are multiple radios in different sites within on the property. So the tour lasted about an hour because there's so much to see there. And then at the end of that tour, we went to their contesting station. I believe there's more pictures of that on the slide. There's this contesting station in the basement of one of the buildings and a bunch of radios. So we spent maybe about a couple hours just talking on the radio and getting to play around with the radio's equipment that they had. And this photo is just from the last full day that we were there. Once the installation had been finished, and that's just the team after we successfully installed all of that equipment. So now I'm going to start talking about the project that I completed as my undergraduate thesis. So this is titled Personal Space Weather Station HF Doppler Observations of the 2024 Gannon Geomagnetic Storm. So I'll be talking about this project in detail part by part. But to put it very broadly in the introduction, so it's one basic way to think about this project that it was about how certain levels how certain solar activity can affect the Earth or the environment around Earth. So first of all, you may be wondering, what is a geomagnetic storm? So a geomagnetic field. So first of all, you have to know about the Earth's geomagnetic field. So the Earth has a geomagnetic field that stretches out into outer space, and the space that where those geomagnetic forces dominate is called the magnetosphere. So a geomagnetic storm is a disturbance in the magnetosphere caused when large amounts of solar energy enter the space surrounding Earth. So there are a few different phenomena that can cause a geomagnetic storm, or cause a large amount of solar energy to suddenly be injected into the near space environment. So a few of the most common causes of geomagnetic storms that include solar flares, which is a burst of radiation from the sun, or coronal mass ejections, which are a burst of solar material. Solar flares and coronal mass ejections commonly happen together, but they can happen independently as well. But geomagnetic storms can also be caused by events that happen in interplanetary space, and not just events that happen on the sun. One example is a phenomenon called a co-rotating interacting region. So that's basically when a slower burst of solar wind is suddenly struck by a much faster moving burst from behind, which sends a shock wave of solar energy towards Earth. So that's another possible cause of a geomagnetic storm. So there are multiple effects that geomagnetic storms can have on the Earth and the environment surrounding Earth. So one of the most visible effects of a geomagnetic storm is that the very extreme ones can cause aurora to appear much closer to, like, much farther south in the U.S. than they typically would be. The photo here on the slide was a photo taken during the May 2024 Gannon storm of the aurora from Virginia, which is very unusual. Typically, you would have to travel to north of Canada, or Iceland, Greenland, to be able to see the aurora that clearly, or at all. So that's one of the most visible effects of that extreme geomagnetic storms can cause. Some other things how they can affect infrastructure. They can cause satellites lose altitude or unexpectedly veer off course. And they can also disrupt GPS communications and HF communications. And I'll be talking about the HF aspect of that in more detail in a bit. So, but the reason why they cause changes to HF communications is because that sudden injection of new solar energy into the near space environment causes temporary changes to the ionosphere, which is the charged region of the upper atmosphere. And the ionospheric response to a geomagnetic storm is its own distinct, but separate but related phenomenon called an ionospheric storm. So, so as I just mentioned, the ionosphere is a charged region of the upper atmosphere created by ionizing solar UV radiation. So those ultraviolet radiation from the sun, that's a very, very, very energetic form of radiation that strips the electrons from the atomic nuclei, which causes free-flowing positive negative charges that causes the ionization and charge layer. So, and the ionosphere ranges from about 60 kilometers to over 3,000 kilometers above the Earth. So it is a significant part of the space environment. And there are 4 distinct regions of the ionosphere that are important. So and these are called the D region, E region, F1, and F2 regions. And these regions aren't static, but these regions aren't static. They're constantly, they move around a lot, and their behavior is heavily impacted by the day-night cycle. So, for instance, the D region disappears during the nighttime, and the E region is significantly diminished at night to the point of almost not being there. And the F1 and F2 region are 2 distinct regions during the daytime, but they combine into a single region during the night when less of that UV that UV radiation isn't reaching that side of the Earth. And the behavior of the ionospheric regions can also depend on the season and the solar cycle. And so those are very well-known patterns that can easily be predicted based off solar activity level. But geomagnetic storms can disrupt those normal patterns. So we talked a little bit about this before, about how high frequency radio waves propagate. But high frequency, or HF radio waves, are the range of that's a portion of the radio spectrum that ranges from 3 to 30 megahertz. And so these radio waves are capable of traveling over the horizon by refracting off the ionosphere. If they simply just traveled straight, they might just fly off into space and never reach a receiver that's over the horizon. But HF waves are significant in that they're able to refract off the ionosphere, bounce back down to Earth, and travel beyond the horizon without being absorbed by the ionosphere or flying off into space. So, and the changes in the ionosphere that can be caused by geomagnetic storms can also be studied through examining the propagation of these HF signals. this is the Doppler shift of when these highly okay as I mentioned before, when when geomagnetic storms can cause changes in the normal patterns of how these ionospheric layers behave, and that includes that they may increase or lower in altitude. So if that region of the ionosphere changes height, that changes the path length of the signal if that signal is bouncing off that region of the ionosphere. So you can think of if a layer that a certain frequency bounces off of is raise increases in height, that's kind of like it's moving away from it. And then you can visualize that in a way as the radio as the wave stretching out or becoming lower in frequency, versus if that layer of the ionosphere is decreasing altitude and making the path length shorter, then that increases the frequency slightly, and that's what Dr. Frissell described earlier as a blue shift. So now I'm going to talk about the Gannon storm. So the Gannon storm was a major geomagnetic storm that occurred from May 10th to 13th of 2024. It's also known as the Mother's Day storm frequently, but the name Gannon storm originates from homage to the space physicist Dr. Jennifer Gannon. So the Gannon storm was an extreme G5 geomagnetic storm. All geomagnetic storms are ranked on a scale of G1 to G5 based on how extreme they are, and with G5 being the highest. So the Gannon storm is the highest in intensity on that scale. And it's also significant because it was the most intense geomagnetic storm to happen ever since 2003. So storms of this severity don't happen very often. And so some of the impacts this storm had were that it caused aurora to be visible over parts of the U.S., including Virginia, which I had mentioned previously, and some places locations even farther south of that. And it also interfered with a GNSS, or Global Navigation Satellite System, farming equipment. A lot of farming equipment uses those satellites to be able to sow crops in very precise rows. So it did cause a huge loss in corn production in the Midwest that year, which I found very interesting. And another thing it caused satellite drag, which is another common effect of major geomagnetic storms. And the specific focus of what my thesis project was, it caused disruptions to HF propagation, including complete radio blackouts. So the purpose of this research project was to answer the following questions. So one, when did the Personal Space Weather Station network begin to detect the storm, and when did it stop? And two, what changes occurred in the data in response to the storm? So the reason why I want to end these questions is because understanding the effects that the Gannon storm had on HF propagation, it can reveal how the ionosphere responds to extreme geomagnetic storms. And it can also help inform us how infrastructure that relies on HF frequencies can be better equipped against similar extreme space weather events that will inevitably happen at some point in the future. So here's the methodology that I followed throughout this project. So first, I compiled a catalog of all the stations that were active during the Gannon storm. And then I now narrow my focus onto one select station, which I chose the station owned and operated by Dr. Frissell, W2NAF, which is located in northeastern Pennsylvania. So then I identified the beginning and the distinct phases of the Gannon storm according to CMH plots, which I'll explain in the next few slides. So, and then I examined all the Doppler shift spectrograms of W2NAF's received frequencies on the dates of the Gannon storm. And then I selected one frequency to begin a detailed analysis, and I chose 15 megahertz. And then I plotted an average quiet time Doppler shift spectrogram on 15 megahertz used as a reference, since I want to know what that data looks like when under quiet conditions to compare it with the Gannon storm data. So then I analyzed changes in the data throughout each phase of the Gannon storm. Yeah, so here's just a map showing the location of the Personal Space Weather Station that I looked at the data from, relative to the transmitting stations that is receiving those signals from. So yeah, they're receiving signals from WWV in Colorado and CHU in Ontario, Canada. So all geomagnetic storms have three distinct phases. But first, and those phases are measured according to the SIM-H component, and that is a global measure of the geomagnetic field H component at the equator. So it's basically a measurement of the disturbance of that component of the geomagnetic field. So So this, the beginning part of the storm is called the storm sudden commencement, or SSC, and that's when a burst of elevated solar wind strikes the magnetosphere and compresses it towards Earth. And then the initial phase of the storm immediately follows that instant, and that's when the magnetosphere is compressed towards Earth over a span of a few minutes, and it causes a brief positive spike in SMH. Then the main phase is when the ring current, one of the electric currents surrounding the Earth in the magnetosphere, that's when the ring current is enhanced and causes an overall decrease in the global magnetic field, and the SMH decreases over several hours. And then finally, the recovery phase is when the ring current gradually loses the excess energetic solar particles, and then those levels of solar activity slowly return to normal over a span of which could last even several days. So here's a plot that illustrates the process that I just described for the Gannon storm specifically. So the Gannon storm started at 1710 UTC on May 10th. All of these times that I'll be using here and for the rest of the presentation are in universal time coordinate. So that's what UTC is for. And so that's the sudden increase in SMH that you can see where that dotted red line is. And then the main phase occurred from May 10th, from 7:15 UT to May 11th, 2:15 UT, so into the next day. And that was that portion of the plot where it's decreasing over those hours. And then the recovery phase occurred from May 11th from 2:15 UT to the end of May 13th, and that occurs from the point after that dotted blue line, where it slowly, gradually returns to that baseline level where it is at the beginning of the plot. So these figures are the spectrograms collected from that personal space weather station W2NAF. So first on the left, this is an example of what the day looks like on a quiet day. So when there's very little solar activity going on or any unusual changes in the ionosphere. So, but then you can compare that to the one next to it, and that's showing the date the Gannon storm started. So yeah, you might notice that, so here I have 5 megahertz, 10 megahertz, and 15 megahertz from top to bottom. So the 5 megahertz frequency, that one is not, so I didn't focus too much on that one as I was doing this project, because those look very comparable between the quiet day and the day the Gannon storm started, because the 5 megahertz signal wasn't reaching W2NAF during the time the storm started. That's why you don't see that red and yellow line towards the end of the day. But 10 and 15 megahertz, you can see some differences between the quiet day versus the day the Gannon storm started. So on the bottom two panels in the figure on the right, you can see where it's like there's a much very spread out signal that suddenly occurs around after 17 UTC, and that indicates the start of the Gannon storm. So yeah, as I mentioned before, the frequency that I chose to analyze in detail was 15 megahertz, and the reason I chose to look at this frequency specifically is because 15 megahertz propagates from the station WWV to W2NAF throughout the 24-hour day and had a strong response to the Gannon storm. It also has, this frequency is also relatively low Doppler shift throughout the 24-hour day, so it provided a very flat baseline to compare that I could use for comparison. So the raw personal space weather station spectrograms, which are the panels that I just showed before, so those are a composite of multiple parameters in the data. They're showing the Doppler shift, the relative strength of the signal, and they can also show multiple traces or the propagation of multiple different signals on that frequency. But it's also sometimes useful to visualize each of these parameters separately, and so which is what I want to do for my project, to look at the Doppler shift on its own. So I create separate plots of Doppler shift versus time and signal to noise level or signal intensity versus time. So I extracted those from the personal space weather station spectrograms using some code that was written by one of my collaborators, Gwen Griffiths. So here's what the average quiet time data looks like from the extracted Doppler shift data. So all quiet days in May of 2024 had similar data for the same frequency, but there are small variations among these days that could be due to equipment how well the equipment's working, or small scale solar events. But I wanted an average spectrogram because that's more representative as a baseline than any single day. So this plot here, I have the average Doppler shift versus time for all the days in May of 2024 with the lowest level of solar activity. So you can see here that there's very little. So the y-axis on this plot only varies by about 1 hertz. So that's and since the frequencies I'm looking at are in megahertz, so a difference of a hertz is not very strong. So there's the flat, so on a quiet day, there's relatively very low Doppler shift going on average. So the main feature of this plot is the sunrise peak that occurs as those ionospheric layer heights are shifting as the sun rises. But even then, that's still within about the plus minus 1 hertz range. So I looked at this the Gannon storm data day by day. So storm site commencement occurred at 1710 UT on May 10th, which I have marked as a dashed red line. So before 1710 on this date, the Doppler shift was it remained within plus minus 2 hertz. So there was not a lot of variation in that signal. So the signal to noise level was very high, which indicated a strong clear signal with reliable data points. But then after the point when the storm started, then I started seeing Doppler shifts of up to 4 hertz in the positive and negative directions. And then on the bottom panel, so the top panel is showing the Doppler shifts, and the bottom panel is showing the signal strength. So on the bottom panel, there's a rapid drop in the signal to noise level, and that indicates that the signal suddenly got weaker once again the storm started. And when a weaker signal means that there's less certainty in the data points. So then from about 19 to 22 UTC, the signal to noise level drops from about like 17 decibels to less than 30 decibels, which is a large difference. So May 11th was the second day that the Gannon storm occurred. So the main phase lasted from about 17 UT on May 10th to 2:15 UT on May 11th. So it lasted into the next day. So the recovery is, but then at 2:15 UTC at the end of the main phase, that's the start of the recovery phase. As those levels of activity in the magnetosphere are slowly returning back to normal. So from about midnight to 600 UTC on May 11th, there are Doppler shift within plus minus like 3.5 hertz, which is much more significantly more than what you saw during a quiet day. But then there was a blackout from about 600 to 1200 UTC, and the signal level was about 20 dB, which is less strong than what I would be hoping for if I was looking for very strong data points with very reliable. So the signal to noise level did not exceed 60 decibels for the entirety of May 11th. So the signal was very weak during the second day of the storm. So in May 12th, the entirety of this date was the recovery phase, and during this day, the Personal Space Weather Station saw a complete radio blackout. So there is no signal received on this frequency for the first half of the day, so for a whole 12 hours. So there's a very low signal to noise level from about for those first 12 hours, and the lower HF signals were detected by this same station during these hours. I also checked what these other stations received during these hours to check that it wasn't just that it wasn't just the equipment not working or not collecting data properly, but other stations also witnessed this blackout, which indicates to me that this blackout was caused by a change in the ionosphere, not having anything to do with their instrumentation. And I also and this blackout was also observed on higher frequencies and other personal space weather stations in the network as well. So, and then May 13th is the last day that the Gannon storm, last day of the Gannon storm. So the signal strength is high for the first 3 hours of it of May 13th, but then it dropped again between like 300 and 1200 UTC. But then that 15 megahertz signal appeared again at 12 UTC and remains for the rest of the day. The signal strength still remains weaker than quiet time than it was during quiet time levels. So that's still showing some effects of the Gannon storm. So then, in May 14th, it was the day following the Gannon storm, the day accepted as the date the Gannon storm is over by. So the Doppler shift in signal noise levels closely resemble the quiet time data, which indicates to me that the personal space weather station has stopped detecting the storm by that point. So there is a brief moment of where the Doppler shift suddenly deviates from that flat baseline, but there was a solar flare that occurred around 18 UTC on that exact date. So that's an example of a small scale solar event that's affecting the data. So here's a summary of my results. So here I have 2 new figures that show the Gannon storm development over multiple days. The stack plot on the left shows each individual date from May 10th to May 14th, all stacked together. So besides what I already mentioned this figure shows that the blackouts that occurred on 15 megahertz took place during the nighttime or just before sunrise. During the daytime on each day after May 10th, there's a relatively flat trace. And the figure on the right shows SimH on the top panel, and then the multi-day personal space weather station spectrogram, and then below that is the extracted Doppler shift data, and that final panel is the extracted signals noise data. So something that looking at all of these plots together makes noticeable is that the moments of elevated Doppler shifts at the start of May 13th and again during the first half of May 14th. So panel C shows that May 13th has predominantly positive Doppler shifts, meaning an increase in path length and therefore an increase in the height of the ionospheric layer that 15 megahertz is refracting off of. But May 14th shows a predominantly negative Doppler shift, meaning the signal's path length decreased and the ionospheric region decreased in altitude on this date. So one of the research questions that I mentioned at the beginning was when the personal space weather station started and stopped detecting the Gannon storm. Based off the data we've seen, the times the personal space weather station detected the start and end of the storm agree very well with what SimH plots tell us. So this means that the personal space weather station is a reliable tool for examining the duration and the duration of an intense geomagnetic storm, such as a Gannon storm. But the data doesn't tell us the distinction between the main phase and the recovery phase down to the hour. The main phase is characterized by large Doppler shifts of up to 4 Hz, and the recovery phase shows smaller Doppler shifts and a few blackouts. But the high Doppler shifts that began during the main phase continued until about 600 UTC on May 11th, which was 3 hours and 45 minutes after the main phase's end. So the personal space weather station data may be an accurate tool for measuring the duration of an extreme geomagnetic storm as a whole, but there doesn't appear to be an instantaneous change in the data and the transition from the main phase to the recovery phase of the geomagnetic storm. So, and then another thing this data tells us is that the Gannon storm caused significant ionospheric layer height changes, and these changes occurred in both directions, as we see both positive and negative Doppler shifts. So 15 megahertz predominantly refracts off the F region of the ionosphere, so this layer appears to have been made very unstable by the Gannon storm. So future work for this project includes repeating the same analysis on the other HF frequencies besides 15 megahertz, because the different frequencies interact with the ionosphere differently. And another way the study might be expanded in the future is looking at the data collected by other personal space weather stations in the network at various other locations. So the propagation of a signal is also affected by the length of the path that it travels, and path length is determined not only by the ionospheric height, but also by the location, but also by the geographical distance between the transmitter and the receiver. So while the transmitting stations, WWV and CHU, are fixed locations, different propagation paths may be studied by examining the data collected by the various other personal space weather station receivers across the world. So yeah, the personal space weather station network is a very extensive source of data, far beyond what I've covered in this specific project, and it offers multiple opportunities for future space weather investigations. And thank you. Thank you.
Are there any questions? I think.
All right. So we are going to be doing a question and answer session. But before we get into that, I do know a couple of you tried sneaking in. I'm too close to someone with. There we go. Okay. Sorry, I was getting feedback. I do notice a couple of you sneaking in during the presentation, thinking you could escape the safety briefing. It is, in fact, inescapable. For those of you who are here, if you need to use the restroom, that is the porta potty in back. It's basically right in front of me since I've moved over to the left a bit. But it is behind you. Once it gets darker, it is illuminated by a red light for ease of finding in the dark. Speaking of dark, it is a state forest. It will, in fact, get dark. So when we go to leave, we are using our headlights because we all enjoy not getting run over, and we should definitely avoid enjoying running people over. This is a fun, family-friendly science experience, not a game of Frogger. We also have a little museum and gift shop area behind me. Feel free to check that out. I will be manning that after question and answer session because I still cannot break the laws of physics and be in two places at once. You might have noticed the white sheds when you were coming in. Each of those sheds has a roll-off roof and houses its own telescope. It looks like we have at least one open. I'm not wearing my distance glasses currently. I have misplaced them. But the volunteers and the ones with the roof rolled off will be more than happy to tell you what we're looking at in the night sky, assuming the clouds cooperate with us. We went over headlights. As it gets darker, if we need any flashlights or whatnot to get around, we do ask that you keep those lights pointed towards the ground, so we don't accidentally blind people. And with that, we're going to get into question and answer session and how that's going to work. For people here, you're going to raise your hand and wave it about like you just don't care, and I'm going to bring you the microphone. Because chances are if you have a question, someone also has the same question, and potentially an online person might have the same question but not be brave enough to ask it, which is silly because the only way we learn is to ask questions. And like I said, I'll bring you the mic. You'll be able to ask the question. Online people, you have it easy. You just get to type it. And I read it off of my magical internet box attached to my arm. So, we are going to get started with the first online question, which is the call sign only assigned, or is it like license plates on cars where you can pay more to pick your own?
Yes, you can pay more to pick your own. It's not a very large fee. I think it's about $15 for 10 years. Maybe a little higher now. But my call sign is my initials, W2NAF. Nathaniel Anthony Frissell. And the University of Scranton is W3USR, Whiskey 3 University of Scranton Radio.
Neat. I'm guessing the W and the number in front means something.
They do mean something. So the W, the W3 or the W2, that's known as the prefix. And any call signs that begin with a W, a K, an N, or an AA through AK, are from the United States. If they begin with some other letter, then they are from some other country. And there's a nice list. You can go look that up. The number for a United States call, the United States is broken up into 10 different call sign regions. So if you are licensed, if you live in New Jersey or New York when you're first licensed, you will have a 2 in your call sign. So I'm from Bloomfield, New Jersey, and that's why I have a 2. Rebecca is also from New Jersey, so she has a 2. The University of Scranton, if you're in Pennsylvania, you would have a 3 in your call sign, and that's why the University of Scranton is W3USR.
All right. Perfect. Then any questions out here? I don't even have crickets, which is weird in a state park. They might have all started hiding away early because of the humidity or the large mosquitoes that can carry away a child. We're starting to get to them. Is that a question I see out there, or are we swatting at mosquitoes? Because keep in mind, I'm like the Jurassic Park T-Rex. My vision's based on movement. So if you hold really still, I'm not quite sure. Which is also why you need to keep your hand up if you have a question. All right, so our next online question, which one of our online people actually attempted to answer as well. Why is Linux used instead of other operating systems?
Cheaper and better.
There was a call from out in the audience. It is cheaper and better, which is about the
There's
same
a
as
lot of truth to that though, because we are an open source project, so Linux is an open source operating system, so it's very friendly for developers to work with. We don't have to pay licensing fees to install it on the different systems. We can customize the Linux distribution any way we want. For instance, when I created the kiosk that's inside the museum, I stripped down the Linux operating system to just the bare bones. If I tried to do that with a Windows system, I would be going crazy.
Yes, we are not deleting this System32 folder.
That's right.
Or I think that's the folder that you don't
But
delete.
it's very friendly for development and developers.
Questions? Okay, I'm going to keep going on with online questions unless, like I said, someone raises their hand. And actually, we're going to bounce right over this next one to one just because you mentioned it. If an organization or school wanted to set up a station like the one at UACNJ, I'm guessing they're talking about the kiosk for learning purposes, how would they go about getting one? Or is there a way for people who are online or remote to see that display?
Yes, there are ways for people to see the display remotely. I don't know that we have that publicly available right now, but we could, if you email us, I could get you that information. And for the school, same thing. We have, if you want to just install and buy one of these systems, we have a whole list of here's what you do to go buy these things and put one of these systems together. We're posting that to our website, and we're also applying for more grants to try to help get these systems in schools.
All right. They do have a lovely list of all the things to do it yourself at home, and they are really good about answering their emails. Even when I accidentally forget to email them and then decide to that 11 o'clock at night is an appropriate time to be emailing stuff. We try and avoid that, but oddly enough, I caught someone while they were awake. All right, so our next online question is this person saw a YouTube short the other day on magnets and specifically compasses. Magnets, as far as they're concerned, opposites attract. So are the poles of the magnets misnamed, or are the poles of the planet misnamed? Because technically, the south pole of the magnet would be the one pointed towards the north pole of the planet.
Yes, they are very observant to notice that, and it is true that the magnetic poles of the Earth, the north magnetic pole is located in the south geographic pole, and the south magnetic pole is located in the north geographic pole. So if you were to draw the field lines of the Earth's magnetic field, they would come out of the south pole and go into the north pole.
Anyone out here? Ooh, yay, we got one. You put your hand down. You're gone. You're one with the shadow people.
I think you mentioned that you were measuring. What's that? Oh, you don't want to hear my voice that loudly. You mentioned that you were measuring down to like a hundredth or a tenth of a hertz.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering, are these pure tones that you're looking at, or are they actually modulated signals? And how do you? Are you just averaging to find the offset there?
The ones that we were showing tonight with those green and yellow plots, those are just unmodulated carriers. So there is the WWV transmits AM, and so there is modulation on there, but the observations we were showing were just of the unmodulated carrier. So then you're asking, do you average to get a particular number? So the answer is no. What we're doing there is we're showing the spectrum. So we took an FFT of this thing. So when you have the yellow and green plots, it's not an average. You're actually seeing the spectrum. Then Rebecca showed that we have a code that Gwen Griffiths developed that will go and pick off the strongest frequency out of that spectrum to reduce it down into something a little bit more manageable. Yeah, the spectrum that we were showing today was only 10 hertz wide. So if you wanted to see the modulation from the AM signal, we'd have to expand it much more.
All right. Any more questions out here? All right. So our next question: is there a maximum height for the towers? I think this is during your section, Rebecca, when you were showing off the big radio towers or data towers. Is it as big as you want? Or hold on. Is there a maximum height for the towers, or is it as big as you want as long as you have the money and follow local, state, federal regulations?
So yes, as long as you follow the local, state, and federal regulations, and you have the money, it's as big as you want. But there are, those regulations can get a little pesky. So over the entire United States, if you go above 200 feet, you have to clear it with the FCC. But usually you have local zoning issues and other issues that you have to clear before you even get to that height.
This just in. Government paperwork is tedious, and you don't want planes flying into things. News at 11. All right. So our next online question that I saw: how quickly does the ionosphere change its altitude?
The ionosphere changes. It's it's on the order of seconds to minutes, really.
All right. Anyone out here? Keep in mind, I'm the blind Jurassic Park T-Rex, so very movement based. Right. So our next one, which is: how does the geographical location of the station change the shape of phenomena observed?
It can change it quite a bit. You have to look at the geometry of where the signal's coming from to where it's going, and so it can change it quite a bit.
Which actually, come to think of it, is kind of how they use to map different things. I think they used signal in a similar way to map the shape of a comet or an asteroid, where they had people line up and they're like, okay, they saw this shape over here, they saw this shape over there, and that's how they figured out a weird thing looked like a peanut.
Right. Yeah, so we can do similar sorts of things, and that's one of the reasons why Rebecca put in her future work that you said you were going, for this project you just looked at my station, but in the future, who's ever doing this next should look at other stations too.
All right. Perfect. Online people, get any last minute questions you have. I like to put that in because they are in the past.
So you're analyzing this data from the different stations. Do the stations just hold the data forever indefinitely? Is it small enough data that you can just keep saving it? How do you know that stations will still have the data from that particular storm?
Well, that's why we have a central database system. So the grant funds a number of universities, including the University of Alabama, which has like petabyte class storage facilities, and so that data goes there, and then we know we can get it from there.
Is that what the website Chris was helping work on?
I think that was a different one.
Okay.
But it's very similar. All the science projects kind of work the same way. They get some sort of university or institution to host a data server, and then they get their instruments to send it up there, and then someone has to deal with archiving it.
And chances are there's always that one person who has downloaded it all and has like the hard drive stored away, like tucked away in their basement, like one of these days I'm going to need this.
Yeah.
And sure enough, someone goes looking, where's the data? I don't know. Frank might have it. He left 20 years ago. At last time we checked, he was in Alabama. I don't know why the accent was needed, but all right. So, just to give online people a couple more minutes, just checking any more questions out here.
I'd like to make a presentation.
There's a presentation.
Yes, a presentation within the presentation.
Oh my, we're having Inception now.
Yes, it's a very brief presentation, but very important.
Okay.
May I make it?
Yes.
All right. So as I said, Rebecca was my student for the past 4 years, and she's also the vice president of our W3USR Amateur Radio Club, and she has worked incredibly hard on this project. And I'm so proud of her for doing such a good job on this, and for going off to graduate school to the University of Rochester. But I hope that she always remembers her time here at the University of Scranton, and for her start as being a ham radio operator. So at the University of Scranton Idea Center, we had made up for her this special desk plate that has laser engraved her call sign, her name, the University of Scranton seal, and the W3USR logo. And I'd like to present this to you and thank you for all of your work.
Also, thank you to the person who messaged me that my glasses are on my head. That was fun. But yes, congratulations. Also, show it off to the camera. Hold on.
Oh, excellent.
It takes a hot minute for. Yeah. Okay, got it. Sorry. I'm like, we should show it off. Technically, you could take a picture and share it in our Discord because that's always fun. But we'd love to hear more about future science you do wherever you go. So
You can come back when you come back to visit your family in New Jersey in between grad school. You can come back here and you can give more presentations about what you're doing up there.
I mean, technically, you don't even have to physically come back here during the winter. We have online presentations where instead of having them here because it's snowy, icy, and kind of slightly treacherous, we switched to online only, where we're still on YouTube and Twitch, so you can present from the comfort of your own home. Right, since that looks like it for all of the questions, I want to thank Rebecca and Nathaniel here for another great presentation. Thank you to everyone who has joined us here and online.
And one more announcement. If you are interested in ham radio, tomorrow there is a Sussex Ham Radio Fest, Hamfest. And some of the people in the audience are going to that. So if you are interested, we can get you information on that.
Yes, I will be there. Whether I will make myself known or not is yet to be. But I'll probably be wearing a UACNJ shirt. Not that I expect people to be like, "Ha, we found you," but I'll probably be there. All right, with that, thank you, everyone. And until next time, clear skies and good seeing.